Hey, I'm Sith King.
And I'm Sonic Sons.
We're the Rambling Reviewers.
And today we're looking at Civil War from Marvel, but not so much the movie itself as the debate within that movie.
To be more specific, we're going to be dividing this into three categories. I will be... Okay, which side would you like to represent?
I'm representing Captain America.
Ah, good. So I'm going to be representing Team Iron Man, and he's going to be wrong. We will be dividing this debate into three separate topics. The first topic is the debate over registration versus how the Avengers operated in a vacuum. The second topic will be who was right in the course of Captain America Civil War, the movie.
Okay.
Keep in mind, this is not going into Captain America Civil War, the Civil War event in comics. That's another animal entirely, and we don't have all the details about that.
Yeah, I haven't read that whole thing. I read part of it. I like the movie better.
I've read part of it, yeah. Same opinion here. The third topic we'll be tackling is which side was right going forward.
Now that we've seen Endgame months ago, and we kind of know how it all turned out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm right, and he's wrong.
Also, we are redoing this whole thing. We recorded this months ago, actually. Years ago. Was it like maybe 1 year ago? I forget.
It was
and somehow the whole thing got deleted. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, so I guess the topic begins. You clearly support no registration, and I support registration. Mm-hmm. The problem with Captain America Civil War, the movie, is that the Sokovia Accords are... Well, okay, let's start at the very beginning. In the film Captain America Civil War, there is an event called in Lagos where the Scarlet Witch accidentally kills a whole bunch of people when she throws a bomb into the air to prevent it from killing a bunch of people in the market. Unfortunately, this means it detonates next to a building and kills like a whole bunch of people. This triggers an event known as the Sokovia Accords, which is basically a whole bunch of nations all over the world have gotten together and said, okay, we think there needs to be limits on the Avengers in order to...
make sure they don't blow up buildings.
Well, I mean, it's a superhero movie. There's going to be buildings blown up anyway.
So just make sure they don't blow up too many of them, is what we're saying.
Well, basically, it means that the Avengers can't just come and go as they please. It means that there will be accountability, and people will be able to say, we would prefer if the Avengers not intervene in our local troubles.
Okay.
And as the film starts off, Tony Stark reveals that he's on the side of accountability. Captain Rogers says, we're not perfect, but the safest hands are our own.
Yep. Which is an interesting switch. I did that on purpose, I'm sure, because Tony Stark was the party animal ridiculous guy who doesn't want to be held accountable for anything, and now, wait, never mind. He's changed, and understandably so, because the Sokovia Accords are named after
Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron, where they did save the world, I'd like to point out, but yes, many civilians died in the process. Mm-hmm. The question is whether you could have done any better had there been some accords set up, which, given one of the facts of the movies, I don't think they would have.
Interesting. I, on the other hand, believe that Tony is coming from the right place, believing that their actions up until... Well, it's important to note that in the MCU, the Avengers started out under S.H.I.E.L.'s, I'm not going to say control, but under their guidance and supervision. However, after the events of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the S.H.I.E.L.D. was destroyed, meaning that the Avengers have basically been doing whatever the hell they want ever since. And we are given evidence by Thaddeus Ross in the film, okay, why the hell was Thunderbolt Ross, a.k.a. from Hell's Heart I Stab at Thee, Hulk, allowed to be Secretary of State? I mean, granted, we are living in a period of time where Donald Trump is president of the United States.
Right, so, how crazy could this be, really?
But, he helped unleash the abomination on Harlem. I'm thinking maybe he's not the best person to be here.
Which is actually a point on my side of the debate.
Yeah, see, the problem is that The problem with both sides of the debate is that both sides have their own unique points and advantages and disadvantages.
Certainly. So, in general, I am actually all for authorities being subject to democratic control, unless they go out of control and do bad things. That's why we invented democracy, we the human species.
Yes, and to quote Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst form of government except for every other one that we've tried.
Right, so for all its flaws.
It has flaws, but ultimately it gives the most amount of people a chance to participate in the government and have their words heard.
Which is why, if the Avengers were merely under the authority of S.H.I.E.L.D., under the U.S. government, which is a democracy, I'd be way more comfortable with that. They are, according to this movie, going to be placed under a UN panel. Now, the UN is not properly democratic, much as it might like to try. Everything is controlled by the Security Council, in which various nations each have one vote. One of those nations is China, which is ruled by a dictator who gets like 1 billion votes, essentially. I don't think this is fair.
True, but the way that it's established, it would be China would have one vote on whether the Avengers go.
Yeah, but one on a council of 5 could really swing the difference towards evil. If there was some corrupt reason you didn't want him to take down Dr. So-and-so, let's say Dr. Doom was around in this universe, and he made a bribe to the Chinese, that could swing votes. And we would be left not doing shit when we should be doing shit.
The problem, I think, with the movie is that it doesn't really The problem with the movie and why this debate has raged on so long is that we aren't really told how the Accords would work, other than a UN panel, which is not really descriptive.
No, it's not.
Because I'm in favor of countries having I believe that the Avengers do need some form of oversight. Them running around, basically, they're being vigilantes, which is against the law in many countries, crossing international boundaries. And some of those nations might not want Avengers intervention. It might be worse for them, but at least they'd have the option, rather than saying, we know better than you.
Right, well, more to the point, sometimes the host nation might actually know better. They might actually have a better plan, like to make a point on your side for you. And that's why we respect sovereignty rights, is at least the possibility that the locals know what they're doing.
Right, and in the Avengers films, we haven't really seen anyone really doing that respecting of sovereignty rights.
No, they cross borders whenever the hell they want.
Exactly. In fact, in the film, one of the big I'll get to that when we get to it, but it's why I'm in favor of them having some oversight, just because it's really easy for someone to say they're violating our rights.
Yes, they are saying that, and that is why they got the UN involved.
I'd like to keep in mind that 117 nations signed the Sokovia Accords. That's well over 50%.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll give you that.
60% of the countries on Earth, which, that's also going to be a point that I'm going to be making later about Captain Rogers' actions. And why I think that the Sokovia Accords in the film... Right now we're just trying to debate the Sokovia Accords in a vacuum. Like, registration versus... It's not even registration. It's more of accepting oversight versus letting us do our thing best.
Yeah. Good.
Our discussion on the film later will be about how those values and which side we should be on based on their actions in the film.
Well, based on, and I'll admit that I may be bringing a touch of fantasy into this because, superhero movies, and you do that by default. We have been presented with characters who are really always doing the right thing. Being heroes they are. Except for, Wanda used to be on the villain side, but then she switched. And they seem to be pretty much immune to temptation. Which is a thing I bring up in my analysis of, Batman, for instance. I know he's not MCU. But people are like, Batman breaks laws all the time. He's, breaking and entering when he, searches the bad guy's apartment. He's interrogating people with, frankly, torture. Threatening to drop a guy off a building does legally count as torture. And I'm always like, that is completely true, and you're right, and it's horrible to do those things. And also, he has this unwritten, but clearly there, magical power of always being right. I'm trying not to get too biased by that, being like, no, I'm sure Steve Rogers would never be corrupted. He's Captain America. In real life, yeah, human beings are susceptible to corruption. You need to build your systems with some awareness of that.
And just having a review process of your missions to understand where things go wrong, and not just trusting that your own internal review would be... it would be a pretty good thing. I mean, okay. Now, right now, this is going to be a little contentious for some people, but in the real world, when a cop kills someone, they get an external review. They don't say to their buddies, hey, were you okay with this guy capping this guy?
Yeah. I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
now,
that's true.
As we see in the real world, that doesn't always work, as seen in Ferguson or any of the other places in our goddamn nation.
The point is more review might alleviate some of these tragedies.
Review on the tragedies might be able to exonerate some people from actions they felt they had to take at the time, or say, no, you were not justified in this.
And get rid of those cops. Yeah.
And the same thing applies to the Avengers. If, say, Tony Stark felt that he had to destroy an endangered animal preserve in order to stop a bad guy, I would want, or had to, God forbid, kill someone, I'd want someone to ask, hey, maybe we should just stop you for a moment and just see if you're mentally competent to stand trial. Or not, blow up a sanctuary or kill someone.
Well, right. In general, the loss of life, civilian casualties, particularly civilian casualties in the midst of trying to accomplish a goal, is something you need to carefully balance the scales on. In Sokovia, and this is the thing, is that the debate is so stacked in favor of the Avengers, kind of artificially so. In Sokovia, yes, a bunch of innocent people died. Also, they saved every single other person on the planet. That is a good score overall. It wasn't like, oh yeah, they had to blow up Ultron because they had a personal grudge against him. It was like, he's literally about to, the thing that killed the dinosaurs again.
Okay, that's fair, but that doesn't... But there were other instances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where there were civilian casualties, and it wasn't a case of, oh, Ultron was going to dinosaur extinct
and that was the beginning of Civil War with the Lagos in Nigeria, yes. I want to say?
I think so, okay. Yes. And that's, I think, where it's coming from. I mean, okay, I'm not saying that civilian casualties are good, but at the same time, if there's going to be some...
we should make sure it's as few as possible.
Make sure it's as few as possible. Maybe highlight what things were going wrong. That sort of a thing.
Right. Frankly, it doesn't make sense that the Avengers are as effective as they are without, a huge support team. Because S.H.I.E.L.D. used to be their support team. Now it's by themselves.
Yeah,
so, who does all their recon and, reads enemy emails in the middle of the night and figures out a dossier of who they're tracking and all. I don't know who does. They don't have a secretary even. There's nobody.
Yeah, before it was S.H.I.E.L.D., which is another part of the reason why I'm in favor of the Sokovia Accords, because it would at least allow them a set of... I don't know. The problem with the Sokovia Accords is that we don't know what's in them.
Yeah.
But I would imagine with UN oversight, they would at least allow them a framework with which they could hire a support team or, get access to intelligence from within inside the countries.
We're just never shown that they need that because somehow they tracked that guy down to Lagos all on their own. I don't know. Maybe Tony did it with his satellites or something.
Yeah. Now, the rest of the... After Age of Ultron, after Winter Soldier, I can only presume that... Stark Industries was the one who was taking care of everything. But at the same time...
That's a private security firm doing whatever the hell they like. Have you ever heard of Blackwater? Yeah. Some issues there.
Yeah, and you can claim that you're doing this for the greater good, but what happens when you start to stray from that? And that's, I think, where it starts to get a little muddled, and I think a good switching point where we go into the second point of order. What happened in the movie?
In the movie, the Earth was never really in jeopardy, come to think of it.
Yeah, no. Okay. I think the problem with the movie is that you could have had this whole story be about the Accords and accountability. That would have been great. The problem is that in practice, it's a whole bunch of people not talking to each other, while Cap ignores pretty much everything because Bucky Barnes is in the picture.
I mean, yeah, I can see why he cares about Bucky, and Bucky was framed for that horrible deed that killed the king of, what you call it?
Wakanda.
Wakanda.
Yeah. So Cap, I don't think at any point in the film, other than like at the very beginning, was like, okay, we need to have a serious discussion about the benefits of the Accords. I think for the most part, it was mostly about what is good for Bucky. Now, I understand where he's coming from in this case, because Bucky is, let's face it, horribly traumatized. 70 years of either cryogenic suspension, torture, or being used as a brainwashed assassin. That is a thing that really needs to be addressed. And I will admit that one of the things that really bugs a lot of people is that Cap tried to stop the anti-terrorism squad from killing Bucky, when really they should have been trying to capture him alive since he was just a suspect of the bombing.
Yeah, what's up with that terrorism squad?
Yeah, I'm blaming that on Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah, that'd be a good place to blame that.
Yeah, look, when you deliberately lure the Hulk to a college campus and then bring attack helicopters...
Yeah, what was the point of bringing him to a college campus, for God's sake?
Yeah, I'm blaming Ross on that on the basis of this... okay, would Tony Stark or the UN do this? No, it doesn't quite fit their MO. Would Thunderbolt Ross do this? Oh, yes. Oh, my, yes. So I'm not blaming Thunderbolt Ross for a lot of it, but definitely on they tried to bring him in lethally by throwing a grenade through the front door first before saying you should surrender.
Well, to talk about this whole idea of does Cap sit down and really talk about things, I think this is a movie-making problem in that logically this whole thing could have been 2 hours of conferences and negotiations and stuff, and nobody throws an single punch the whole time, right? But what about this? What about this angle? What about that? There's freaking some random country has this one random objection to run random thing. No, you're out of order, sir. Blah, blah, blah. And then we would get all the detail and be super boring. So now we're left trying to have this debate with kind of a vacuum. The comics, though, actually had more leeway, and I'm told that they didn't use it well. But in a comic, you could have like a whole issue, outside the main story that just details a conference. And like, okay, read that if you feel like it. If you're into this, it'll help inform the rest of the action-y stuff. And if you don't, you can skip it. You can't do that in a movie. But no, even in the comics, they didn't really tell you how the Accords worked. In fact, in the little bit I read in the comics, before they passed the Registration Act, because it wasn't the Accords, before they passed the act, a bunch of I think it was the FBI or maybe probably no, SHIELD, must have been SHIELD. Soldiers show up to arrest Captain America for violating the law that hasn't been passed yet. And they're going to arrest him anyway. I'm like, wow, fascist much?
Now, okay, in the movie, it's understandable why they're attacking Captain America because he is breaking.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
okay, even though he's trying to protect Bucky from, even in the first scene where we see him fighting, he's trying to protect Bucky from the anti-terrorism squad. Which, okay, yeah, they shouldn't have gone in with, leading with a grenade. But here's the thing, that counts as aiding and in resisting arrest.
Yes, it does.
So that's still a crime. And when we see Tony Stark later in the film, he's trying to negotiate with people to get Cap lawyers and additional time to bring him in peacefully and non-violently.
And he tries to arrange it so Bucky can go to a mental health facility instead of Wakandan prison. Remember this bit? And Cap almost signs it, but then he finds out that Tony put Wanda under house arrest without a trial, I may add.
Okay, first off, he never explicitly says it's house arrest.
Okay,
he says you should stay in the house because there are literally angry mobs who want to kill you.
And also there's a deadly robot who says, I'm sorry, I can't let you leave. Much as he likes her.
Let me add the second point.
Yeah.
Wanda is not an American citizen.
Yeah.
She has a visa.
Okay.
If she was to, say, violate that work permit visa, she could get deported back to Sokovia and kicked out of the Avengers. One of the ways that she might do this is running into an angry mob and use her powers to defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on Tony's side on this one, because that sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Now, wait a minute.
Remember, don't use your powers to defend yourself, or you could get kicked out. You can go, but, just don't do that. Then someone inevitably goes, hey, you're that bitch who killed a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, but your side was the letter of the law side. And laws say you can't be confined against your will. If it's stupid to leave the house and you're stupid enough to do it, then you will face the consequences. We can't force you to stay in unless there's a law that says so, and there is no such law yet.
Well, admittedly, Tony and Vision could have explained that better.
Yeah, because it wasn't, you should stay here. It was, Vision, are you not letting me leave? And he was like, yeah, sorry, I'm not letting you leave. The phrasing matters.
Yeah.
And then they had to rescue her with Hawkeye and all this other stuff. She was under house arrest.
Okay, she was under house arrest, but was she really... Okay.
I'm not saying it was the worst thing that anyone's ever done. I'm saying it was a breaking of the law, which is hypocritical for the pro-law people.
And I'm not so sure... Okay, I'm not saying that it's, necessarily house arrest.
She was in a house. She couldn't leave. What do you call that?
Okay, well...
What other word is there?
Well, actually, technically, considering that Vision hadn't signed the Accords yet, Vision and Tony weren't peacekeepers, so I guess they...
See?
Kind of were. To be fair, they were detaining someone who
Then she should be read off her rights and told the charges against her and be allowed to post bail and all this other stuff that is important for the law not to be corrupt.
Okay, Tony made a mistake here, but
yes.
Let's be honest here. He was probably very jet-lagged when he made that decision.
I'm sure he was.
Look, he flew from New York to Germany.
I know.
So, and it is implied in the movie that he does have lawyers who are working on making sure that Wanda's visa does not get revoked.
Okay.
So,
that's nice.
Absolutely. Tony, in this scenario, should have said, all of this stuff that we're saying, you really should not do this on the basis of you could die and or get deported. Or both. Yeah. We kill you and then deport your corpse via catapults.
Yeah, that would be very bad. I'll give you that.
No, that would be hilarious. Morbid, but hilarious. Okay, then comes... Some people use this as an argument against the Accords that as soon as Bucky is in there, Baron Zemo manages to murder the specialist who's supposed to talk to Bucky, sneak past dozens of UN guards, and manages to trigger Bucky, making him go on a murderous rampage.
Yeah, you need better security, guys.
Yeah. I will admit this is a point against the Accords in another way, in that clearly the things are not set up to hold enhanced individuals.
Yeah. To be fair, though, to make a point on your side, you could say the Avengers, without the Accords, made the same mistake back in Age of Ultron, when Wanda was able to zap all of their brains and nobody was able to stop it.
Okay, so...
Similar, nobody can stop the mind controller dude. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So, anyways... because of this, Captain Rogers decides, no, I do not think that it's safe to keep Bucky there. Which, okay, given that the last time he was held there... However, at this point, is where I start to think that his decision-making skills are compromised. Because he doesn't call Tony and try to explain what happens. Okay, how easy would it have been to do this? He wakes Bucky up. Bucky's arm is in the vice, like it is in the movie. He says, Tony, I'm sorry. Right now, I can't really... I don't think it's a good idea to trust the UN forces with keeping Bucky there because Baron Zemo... Okay, he's not really a Baron here.
Just Zemo.
Zemo was able to get in and trigger Bucky's command phrases. He's really dangerous. He needs transport back to a United States facility or somewhere where Zemo can't get easy access to him. Instead, what happens is Steve decides to listen to Bucky, who has told him Zemo wanted to know the location of 5 more Winter Soldiers. And he brought Sam with him, and Sam decides to drag in Clint, Wanda, and Scott Lang, who apparently had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
Which, okay, this is kind of morally shady for bringing Scott in is a little morally shady because you're basically bringing him on a. Well, they're deliberately not following the law at this point.
An illegal mission, yes.
They're going on an illegal mission. They haven't really explained to him, hey, this is an illegal mission where bad things are going to happen. If you do this, here are the consequences.
I mean,
he apparently just barely showed up there, and they were like, what's going? Do you know what's going on? Something about super assassins or something. I didn't really listen.
I mean, they had told him there were super assassins. That should have been a clue. This was a dangerous mission.
Well, there's danger, and then there's illegal. We're going behind the backs of our teammates, sort of thing.
Well, I'm going to say
this is violating the Accords.
I'm going to say it's unclear whether they had told him it was illegal or not. It could just be he knew it was illegal, but he thought, hey, if Cap says so, it's fine by me.
Which, okay, granted, that's not exactly a great thing to do, but still.
Well, Cap has got a lot of respect by a lot of people, so you can understand why he might think that way.
So currently, Captain America and his team are going on an illegal mission to Siberia, which, by the way, then Clint, who was in retirement, breaks into the Avengers compound, blows up a bunch of stuff, assaults an officer of the law.
Who was holding her illegally? I'm going to rate you on that point.
Okay, yes. Assaults an officer of the law, and then incites a person to also commit an act of assault on an officer of the law. Yes, the assault was illegal.
Okay.
But the thing is about doing crimes, you don't balance it out by doing more crimes.
No.
The guy who was making meth framed me, so I decided to grow pot.
Yeah.
Clearly, and with that pot I stole all of his customers. Clearly, I am the hero in this scenario. Why are you arresting me?
Well, again with the movie magic, because imagine if Clint, hired a lawyer and, filed subpoenas, or not subpoenas, whatever the hell else you need to file.
If only there was a rich guy who had lawyers who were actively working on this case right now.
That rich guy is the one who said she should stay there.
Yeah, okay, and we've admitted that he makes mistakes and shit.
So, anyway, he busts her out, physically, through fire force.
Yeah, they throw Vision through 12 stories.
Yeah, I guess he's okay though. He's a magic robot.
Yeah, just because he's okay doesn't mean that
it
was okay to do that.
Well, it's kind of a self-defense escaping a legal arrest, but
yeah. Then comes the airport battle, which
everyone gets to fight in a way that no one dies. Yay!
This is just a bucket of stupid on both sides, because at this point, Steve has the option of saying to Tony Stark, listen, this is why we're doing this. This is why we felt it was necessary to do this. We need to hurry, otherwise 5 more super soldiers of the same category as Bucky could be let out to do whatever Zemo wants. We could have ended the whole thing right there, but instead, Steve admitted to nothing, claimed that Tony was the one who split the Avengers by signing the Accords, when really it was Steve. Tony is the one who's obeying the law and doing what the Avengers are supposed to be doing, bringing in dangerous fugitives, while Steve is leading his own people on an illegal mission without any authorization to try to stop a threat that hasn't been verified. Except on the word of a guy who, let's face it, turns out to be lying.
Oh, he isn't? What are you talking about? They get there and they do find the guys. He just didn't know they were dead. You thought they were alive. Okay,
fine. He was still the word of a terrorist, relayed via the words of a guy who had been mind fucked. So, none of the people in this game of telephone were what I'd call reliable sources. Look, if Loki was at any point in this conversation, it would be a more trustworthy person. And Loki is the god of lies.
Come to think of it, though, I cannot... I don't have a really good explanation for why Steve didn't say, hey, we're going to Siberia for this specific reason. They kind of had to pass it off as. And then everyone was pissed and they ended up fighting before anything could get resolved. So
yeah, to be fair here...
It was a cool scene.
Tony gave the anti-registration. Tony gave the Team Cap every opportunity to surrender and explain themselves. Because really, why would all of these enhanced individuals be going off on an airplane trip to God knows where, presumably together? That seems kind of weird. But
okay.
Tony also really probably shouldn't have brought the 15-year-old to the adult fights. So yeah, that's points off on his side.
He does regret it halfway through and tells Spider-Man, "Okay, you're done. Go home." He actually feels responsible for him, so I like that. And Spider-Man has always been remarkably good at fighting anybody, regardless of age.
Yeah.
But this is a rookie Spider-Man in this case, so I understand.
Yeah,
that would be kind of dangerous.
Then the anti-Red side, then Team Cap, well, has Scott fucking Lang. Look, honestly, as a person, I like Scott Lang. Like, in his solo movie and in Ant-Man and the Wasp, he's a great guy. In Endgame, he's the one who comes up with... He's apparently the sole reason that they won, because...
Yeah, well, also the rat. The rat that saved the universe.
The rat that saved the universe by giving us Scott Lang.
Yeah, I know.
But in this fight, he does not come off well. Look, I get that Scott Lang is supposed to be a legacy hero. Scott Lang is supposed to be something that, honestly, I really like in comics. Legacy hero. A hero that has previous iterations of that hero behind them. There is a weight of history. And I understand that Scott Lang is a bit more of a goofball, and that he's not exactly the most responsible kind of guy. But the airport fight, he just comes across as an idiot.
I mean, he throws
a water truck. He throws what he thinks is a water truck without checking to see, oh wait, is this full of airplane fuel? And nearly kills several people, causing like thousands of dollars worth of damage. And the worst he says is, oops.
Oh,
that's not an oops. That's a big oops.
Yes. I mean, this is justified in story by the fact that Scott was always a thief and not like a martial arts expert type of dude. One could argue that, yes, you're making the Cap side look a little bad by doing that. But Tony's side's got their accident too, right? I mean, they paralyze... not Falcon. War Machine. War Machine. What's his name?
Yeah, War Machine was being shot. Okay, Vision was trying to cripple Falcon. Okay, not cripple. Shoot down Falcon, and okay, I don't actually blame either side for this one. It was just a crappy missed shot, you know.
Well,
you don't expect Falcon to go, wait, my enemy! I'll take the bullet for you!
No, but if the whole idea is holding our heroes to a higher standard when they shoot things that weren't supposed to be shot, then hey, Team Tony, you failed to hold yourself to that higher standard and accidentally shot one of your own people. I mean, it's got to be at least as embarrassing as throwing the water truck thing that didn't actually cause any permanent damage to human flesh.
Yeah, true. There's also the incident where Scott Lang decides to try to literally smack Tony and War Machine into the ground with a plane wing that he ripped off.
Yeah, that could have been deadly.
Not to mention, it wrecked a plane.
Yeah, he did wreck a plane.
You know, the initial stages of the fight where they're just punching each other in the middle of the tarmac, that's okay, you know. Scott Lang is just a freaking menace in this fight. He falls into a plane, he, like, crushes a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes. For the greater good, they did end up stopping Zeno, even though it turns out stopping Zeno was not super important because he didn't actually have any super soldiers.
Yeah.
So when you think about that...
This brings us to the end of it. They don't really stop Zemo.
I mean, they do apprehend him.
Yeah, once he basically gives up. And it wasn't even the Avengers who did that. It was T'Challa who did that.
Right. I'm sure Cap could have done it himself if T'Challa wasn't there.
Yeah. But here's where I think that Cap really loses the moral high ground for a lot of the film. Captain America knew that the Winter Soldier killed Howard and Maria Stark. He knew this since Captain America Winter Soldier. This takes place before Age of Ultron. And in Age of Ultron, he has the gall to lecture Tony about keeping secrets, specifically relating to how Tony created Ultron, when, even though I went back and rewatched it, Tony later says, we didn't even have an interface for the program yet. There is no way that it should have been able to do this, meaning that it was really more of the Mind Stone that did this, not Tony.
Well, he was working on it.
He was working on it.
I don't think the Mind Stone does things completely on its own. You have to give it like something to work with.
Yeah, but it didn't even have an interface, a way for it to interact with the rest of the world. So I'm giving Tony a pass on this one.
Mm.
So Captain America knew that Bucky murdered Howard and Maria Stark. He kept this from Tony and had the balls to say Tony keeps secrets. And then he decides to not tell Tony any of this really important information until it is literally shoved in Tony's face. And then acts surprised when Tony decides to take the perfectly rational thing of, hey, you know that guy you've been trying to rescue this whole time? He killed your mom! And Tony responds with a very rational, oh, excuse me while I pull out all of my weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So, then Captain America and Bucky decide to fight Tony, which, again, considering Tony's at this point in a murderous rage from seeing, his parents be literally beaten and choked to death by a person they trusted. They decide to disable him, destroy the arc reactor, and leave him alone in the middle of Siberia.
I have to assume they called someone to pick him up.
Right.
He didn't freeze to death. They're not that cruel. Both.
Yeah, so
So, several layers to that. One, totally understand Tony's murderous rage, being that he suffered so much tragedy. Two, kind of have to point this out, because we're doing the Civil War debate episode. Was assassinating Bucky authorized by that Sokovia UN panel? Because that's the whole thing he was going for. Then maybe the panel should get to review Bucky's mental health and whether he was properly responsible for what he did at the time under the mental health, under the situation that was at the time. And is that really him versus kind of Bucky being puppeted, right? And should he bear more responsibility? And he doesn't stop to put Bucky on trial and all this shit. He tries to kill him, which makes sense for the character to do that. But incidentally cuts against his own argument about putting himself in check.
On the other hand, it works very well to prove his arguments
that
they need regulation, because otherwise people can just go out and go on murderous rampages with their suit of power armor.
So it's a little more like proving him to be a hypocrite, but not proving his point to be wrong.
Okay, yeah, but it's an in-character form of hypocriticalness.
Yeah, no, that is. As for as for Steve not telling Tony about Bucky, that is tricky. That is, if Bucky had been responsible for his actions, absolutely you tell everyone this shit so they don't have to trust the guy. In a strange world where mind control exists, and you want to tell yourself that's not really Bucky, it's just a Bucky-shaped robot essentially being piloted by the mind control, then I could see Steve sort of awkwardly saying to himself, well, that doesn't count. That's just a guy who looks like Bucky, and he awkwardly didn't want to bring this up and have Tony hate Bucky forevermore and possibly try to kill him. And Bucky was innocent of that crime, and he didn't want him to get killed for a crime he didn't really commit. It was this, I get it. I can see why Tony would be upset about that. But in a strange world where mind control exists, I can also see how Steve feels. He's innocent of this. I don't want him to bear the guilt.
Okay, I can understand that, but there's still the option of telling the person who was directly affected by this. We've known that Howard and Maria Stark had a car crash, and that forced Tony into being the leader of Stark Industries ever since literally the first movie in the MCU, Iron Man 1. Now, I understand very well that that Steve would have that mental disconnect. This isn't Bucky, I need to protect Bucky, and possibly even a little bit of Bucky is literally my last link to my home time. So, I can understand that, but it doesn't mean when you're to quote Dragon Age, if your power affects only yourself, then you can do as you will. Once it starts affecting other people, then you must consider the consequences of your actions.
Yes.
So once that wasn't a secret, you couldn't argue that, oh, it was Bucky's secret. Oh, it was Hydra's secret. It was S.H.I.E.L.D.'s secret that Howard and Maria Stark were literally brutally beaten to death in the middle of a road in 1991. You can't really say that anymore because these are Tony's parents.
Yeah, overall, you know, if Cap knows this a few years in advance of it being revealed, you know, I could see it is more mature to approach Tony one day and tell him what's up. The way it comes across in the movie, they kind of skip, like, they make it feel like this all happened very quickly. And to be fair, it's not entirely clear when he learned this specific fact about Bucky as opposed to just knowing, oh, he's the Winter Soldier.
Actually, I can pinpoint the exact moment.
Really? Why didn't they bring this up?
Okay, who was the guy who was turned into an AI?
Oh, that guy. Yeah. Oh, did he mention that he killed Tony's parents?
He said the Winter Soldier has been responsible in correcting the course of history for the last 70 years or so, and anytime someone acts out a little bit, accidents will happen, he said, and showed Howard and Maria Stark's death.
Okay. Never mind.
Well, okay, newspaper clipping of the death.
So long as he showed their names, then that chunk of my argument falls to pieces. Okay, so he did know. So he should have told him.
Not to mention another factor. Since in that movie, Captain America decided to dump all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files directly onto the internet, that would have been... And I can imagine, you know, Steve wanted to find Bucky and would probably want to look up places where Bucky had been to try to find clues. That might have come up. It wasn't shown on screen, but that is certainly within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, telling Tony in advance might have helped prevent the near death of Bucky at the end of this film.
Also his own near death.
Also his own near death, right, but just, he's the type of guy that thinks about other people. So, yeah, that was an understandable mistake, but still a mistake.
So the problem is that both sides made a lot of mistakes in this film. Like, both Tony and Steve did not communicate enough with each other. I mean, just talking out would have really solved most of the problems.
Yeah, the way the pace of events goes, it feels like no one really had time. At the tarmac, for instance, they really felt like they didn't have all that long to go catch Zemo. Granted, it should only take about a minute to explain that Zemo exists and we're going to Siberia. Maybe that would have been a little more sensible if there was a sense that not only had Zemo snuck into Bucky's prison facility, but like also had other eyes and ears within the UN. So it's like if we tell Tony, maybe he tells the UN, maybe Zemo finds out, maybe he launches his plan an hour early, that type of thing. But they didn't establish that.
Yeah, so ultimately I see Tony's side as a flawed attempt to, you know, make sure that the law enforce the law, while Steve didn't seem to have learned the lesson that going off basically half-cocked resulted in Lagos.
Going off half-cocked resulted in Lagos. It also saved the world on earlier occasions. Saved Bucky in this movie from the anti-terror squad. Did not save us from those Winter Soldier guys, but it was plausible they were going to be released and make horrible things happen to the world. Yeah,
the thing with Bucky, though, it also resulted in that chase scene on the highway where didn't they blow up part of a tunnel and cave it in?
Yeah, I didn't hear of any fatalities, but you're right, that is a very dangerous thing to do.
And you can't really argue that that was for the fate of the world.
No, that was the fate of Bucky, more like it.
It was the fate of Bucky, not to mention it was kind of sort of basically just a brawl between superhuman individuals. Also, T'Challa, you know, I already think your nation is a pile of shit, but, you know, look, I'm still mad that they didn't start helping out once it was revealed that holy shit, aliens are a thing and they hate us.
Yeah.
But, literally pissing on the sacrifice of your father. Okay, maybe not literally pissing on, but...
He was avenging his father. What are you talking about now?
Let's see. His father, King T'Chaka, was one of the main architects of the Sokovia Accords, which said people with enhanced abilities need to be held accountable. Which is why T'Challa decides the first thing he does after T'Chaka is dead is murderous rampage! Murderous rampage to hunt down Bucky with his enhanced ability and super suit.
Yeah.
Because that's what accountability means.
I could see him being torn between the desire for revenge versus the desire for accountability. And how about, we'll just do accountability next week, okay? Let me just kill this one guy. Just this one guy. Come on.
I'm just imagining King T'Chaka going, God damn it!
Yeah, it's actually, come to think of it, Bucky winds up under Wakanda's care in a later film. And you could have done a whole thing of like, I'm so sorry, I tried to kill you earlier.
In fact, he actually says that's why he's taking
that's why
care
he's
of.
doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Which means we're kind of at the end of the film, so moving on to what happened next.
Sure.
Now, what happened next is a problem. See, because the way I see it, the Avengers 2012 was kind of the high watermark for preparedness of the MCU.
Suppose.
The rest of the films seem to be a gradual downslide in how prepared the world was to fend off an alien threat. Based on, how useful something would be to help defeat Thanos. For example, in Avengers 2012, the Avengers are being backed up by S.H.I.E.L.D., a multinational organization.
Are they multinational?
Well, they operate all over the world.
Okay, I assume they were American. But...
Yeah, but they have bases and operations all over the world.
So do the Americans. Have you noticed the American military?
Yeah, but they're run by the World Security Council.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, and who the hell are the World Security Council?
And why the hell did they screw things up when we came up with a much better plan than they did? Point from my side.
Also, they were infiltrated by Hydra. So.
Also, they were infiltrated. Another point from my side.
Yeah, but they got rid of Hydra.
If I were Cap, I'd be very scared there's still a little bit of Hydra out there somewhere.
Okay, fair enough, but,
You should have brought that up in the movie. You should have been like, how do we know this panel isn't, all Hydra? We don't know for sure.
Yeah. Anyways, let's see. In the wake of that, okay. And what's the next film in the MCU after that? After Iron Man? What's the next film to directly deal with S.H.I.E.L.D. after that? Captain America Winter Soldier, where S.H.I.E.L.D. is completely demolished, leaving just the Avengers on their lonesome. Meaning the Avengers have no backup in the form of trained agents, intelligence from all over the world, scientists who can help analyze alien artifacts like Infinity Stones or reverse engineered Chitauri technology, people who could potentially have taken down the people from Spider-Man Homecoming,
The Vulture?
Yeah. I don't know what his organization's called.
I forget.
Yeah, anyways. So, no, the Avengers don't have that. Then comes Age of Ultron, where it's revealed that Tony has multiple AIs that help him do things. Well, after Age of Ultron, well, no, we can't have the Iron Legion anymore because that might be useful against aliens.
Can you imagine the Iron Legion in the final Endgame fight? Especially with all those extra years?
Yeah.
He just brings, 1,000 of those from the future, and, boom, win. The end.
Then, on top of that, we have Civil War, which basically meant that the number of active Avengers... The day that Infinity War started, the number of active Avengers in New York at the time that the children of Thanos came down was Tony Stark. And that's it.
I guess. Doctor Strange doesn't count, yeah.
Doctor Strange is not an Avenger. Bruce Banner's been off the team for a couple years ever since he somehow jumped into a plane and wound up on an alien planet. Which, seriously, that is a big plot hole that I want to know how the hell that happened.
Yeah, some sort of crazy space portal right in the middle of his flight path.
Yeah, how did no one notice a crazy space portal?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that just has never made sense. Meaning that when the children of Thanos arrived, it was just Tony and his admittedly amazing bleeding-edge armor and Spider-Man.
Yay.
Who are not people I want... Look, I get it. You have to make it so that it's challenging. But at the same time, if you had... Well, there's two options of what could have happened if they agreed with you or they agreed with me. If they agreed with you, that would mean that all of the Avengers would have been on the run at the same time, and a new group of enhanced individuals would have been trained up by the UN. And who knows how they would have been trained up, but given how the Marvel universes tend to react to any sort of governmental control, unless for some reason it's with governments that are ruled by kings?
No.
I don't get this. Remember, people, democracy is bad. Trust in all-powerful deities and rulers.
Except Doctor Doom. He's evil.
Okay, well, MCU, I mean.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Which is just kind of weird to me, given that Captain America is supposed to be one of the leaders.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we'd have the team of screw-ups run by a corrupt UN, because there's no other way to characterize them, ever. Meanwhile, everyone's hiding out in Wakanda, probably getting on T'Challa's nerves, and Tony is completely separated from Stark Industries, meaning that he can't maintain his armor or upgrade it to the bleeding edge technology.
Wait, what part did he get separated from Stark Industries?
This is if he went on the run.
Oh, if he went on, I'm sorry.
If he went on the run, he would be separated from Stark Industries. Not to mention that Stark Industries would probably also take a massive hit in the private sector, leading to hundreds, if not thousands, of layoffs all over the country as people associated, hey, this company is associated with that traitor Iron Man.
You know, he could have done the secret traitor type thing and pretend not to be with the Avengers anymore and keep his company.
Fair enough.
And then he could be like, oh man, someone stole one of my Iron Man suits and he's flying around calling himself Iron Man. It's definitely not me, you guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, he established pretty early on that you can't really do that.
Oh yeah, well, the point is he could make something up.
So that means no... Okay, so even under your scenario, the rest of the Avengers have gone rogue, so we are back to the exact same point that we were at the beginning of Infinity War.
Yeah, potentially.
Or if we go with my scenario where Tony goes on the run with them, then he gets no bleeding edge armor, and New York gets attacked by aliens, and it takes several hours for the Avengers to get to them. If they do get to them, and aren't in fact saving Vision's ass when he decides to go play Hide the Mind Stone with Wanda.
Yay.
Which, yeah. So in my scenario, where they all join the Accords and are in fact stationed in New York and not on a mission when Infinity War starts, because there's no need to go pick up Vision as he's having hot, fun, sexy times in the Avengers base with Wanda, you get multiple Avengers there, and they manage to defeat the children of Thanos.
I would like to point out that you are assuming they are not on a mission somewhere else and are not forced to do pointless bullshit while the UN debates for several hours, or all the other things that could happen with a dumb bureaucracy running the show. Particularly, had Thanos been smart enough to, say, pull strings, bribe officials, and deliberately set up bullshit.
Yeah, I don't think that if Thanos was smart enough to do that, he would have sent down a spaceship with Squidward leading the charge and a guy who wields the biggest scythe I've ever seen, and yes, this does include Ruby Rose, saying, "Attention everyone! We're going to kill literally all of you!"
Right, but to be fair...
Don't worry! This is a good thing! So, I mean, I'm just saying that doesn't... Bribing officials doesn't really seem to be his style.
No, but they couldn't have known in advance what his style was when they had never met the guy before. And his previous thing had been a whole man behind the man thing, right? Working through Loki, who is a mess around behind the scenes type of guy when he feels like it.
Yeah, even then, he was
really out loud about it.
Yeah, Loki was really not subtle in his first attack. I've heard some people go, oh, Loki was trying to get Thanos to fail in this thing so that he would get rescued or killed by the Avengers so he wouldn't have to suffer under his heel again. I prefer to think that Loki is a fucking idiot.
Yeah, he is.
No, really, he's kind of an idiot. He's like that guy that says he's really clever, but in reality does not know nearly as much as what he's talking about. So basically us.
Oh, no.
Self-deprecating humor. Yeah.
So yeah, it's unclear where they would have been, what they would have been doing. Honestly, it's unclear in every scenario because say they have their own team, they still might be like dealing with some really random small crisis in Guadalupe or something, and oh wait, Thanos shows up in New York, and it takes time to go places. Thank goodness you have Doctor Strange. Just skip all that. Never mind.
Yeah, you realize that as you were saying.
Yep, pretty much. Well, kind of. Makes shit convenient. Yeah, it's funny how, they skip over that generally in comics. Like, the bad guys are always, like, either attacking where you live or flying to where they are is, like, not a big deal at all. It's never like, oh, shit, he started attacking 2 hours ago, and I'm still on this airplane, and it's another 3 hours to get there, and I'll just read a magazine while I wait. Like, logically, that should happen a lot.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely should.
That's why you have not just one team of cops in the world, but, like, many teams in every single location.
Yeah.
So, yeah, obviously they end up winning. That's cool. And they did that without a UN panel telling them how to do it. You could take it a point. Look, again, as I said...
I don't really think that winning describes what happened in Infinity War.
I'm sorry.
Losing a lot in Infinity War.
Infinity War is when they lost a lot. Then they brought it back in Endgame. I was taking...
Yeah, after literally half of the universe died, and they spent 5 years with literally every human in the world having a depressive funk.
Yes, and I don't know how...
You know what you sound like right now? What? You sound like Professor Hulk going, I see this as a total win, after turning Scott Lang into a baby.
Yeah.
That is what you sound like right now.
I don't know that them being under a UN panel necessarily would have worked better.
Right, I'm not... Okay, admittedly, that is a debatable topic, but them all being in one place and still working as a team might have worked better.
Let's see how that plays out. If they had defeated those first 2 Children of Thanos that showed up, the other ones are still getting away with the Mind Stone. Thanos would show up on Earth to try and claim the Time Stone. They would basically have that same fight they ended up having on Thanos' planet.
No, they would not. They'd be on Earth, meaning that, well, they would... Since they know that they have to get the Mind Stone out, you'd probably have... They wouldn't be going to Titan, in this case.
Well, no, they wouldn't go to... I'm saying, roughly the same people fighting the same guy. I guess more of them could have...
Well, I guess the Guardians wouldn't be there. They were heading to Titan. And since we're not going to Titan in this...
In this scenario, the Guardians don't show up at all, apparently.
Yeah, okay, so Thanos would be coming, and it would be the same people fighting him, but he'd have way less Infinity Stones.
Well, that might work out in their favor. Man, just imagine beating Thanos before he gets all 6 stones.
Also, there's like allies that can call on. I mean, it's not... Okay, let's leave out the fact that Marvel apparently does not give a shit about any of the stuff that happens in the spin-off TV series like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Daredevil or The Defenders or...
Jessica
Jones or any of those. Yeah. Because they don't.
I understand why. I've only watched some of that.
Yeah, see, but the thing is about this, even assuming that that wasn't the case and that you couldn't call upon the Inhumans because they showed up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Or any of the Defenders in New York, which would be kind of cool, but I don't know. Anyways, even assuming you couldn't do that, you do have an army of enhanced individuals who would be willing to call if Doctor Strange called upon them.
Yeah, remind me why Doctor Strange didn't call up more people when the Children of Thanos first showed up?
I'd like to think that it was just happening too fast.
Yeah, I guess.
Or maybe he did and they were all like on the bathroom because of the...
like...
Oh god, what was in the annual Mage Chili Cook-Off? Oh god, Bob, god damn it!
But yeah, like, logically you think... You guys never really established how this works, but could Strange just be like, warp to Captain America, warp to Wanda, warp to Vision, warp to everybody shows up in New York now. Hello, we are fighting these dudes.
I mean, they did that in Endgame.
In Endgame. Why doesn't he do that earlier?
I like to think that it just happened too fast and they got too far out of range. Except that they bring in Howard the Duck and the Ravagers for the final fight.
Oh, was Howard the Duck in the final fight?
It was like a blink and you'll miss it moment. But yeah, they brought in the Ravagers from another planet.
Oh, cool. Good to see you, Ravagers. Thanks for fighting Thanos with us.
Yeah.
You also wonder where all the militaries of the Earth went.
Yeah, and why was it just Wakandan military fighting?
Just Wakanda.
Get on back! Get on back! Right, so we're the most technologically advanced nation in the world. We've used it to make pointy sticks!
I know, right?
And capes that don't cover our whole bodies with energy fields. Meanwhile, just U.S. soldiers are just like, hey, buddy, nice weapon that was first perfected back in the Bronze Age. I have a gun.
You think someone could have nuked that donut ship while it was leaving, right? Oh, they're trying to point a missile at that, you know? And then just as Tony and Spider-Man are boarding, like, oh, wait, shit, missiles, never mind, and they jump off, and the thing gets hit.
How is that not how it should have ended?
Yeah, because there were so many other how it should have ended that they had to do there. Like when Endgame, they're like, oh, you know, there's 3 stones in New York in the right year. Yeah, well, there's 6 stones at the garden just before Thanos destroys them. So they go back there and just chop his head off. Oh, look, all 6 stones. Oh, the end. Like, oh, right. That time travel mechanic is forever ridiculous.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
We've got to, at some point, I like the idea that Thanos kills half the universe in the first of the 2-part story, and then we bring them back somehow. But I would like to plot that out in my head, how this would work in a way that isn't freaking ridiculous. I mean, for instance, if you could jump back in time exactly once, for some reason, right? Then you have less settings to visit, but at least you would have an explanation as to why we don't do this all the time.
I was confused about the whole multiple time alternate timeline thing. If it was just in the same timeline that they were normally in and just borrowed them, fine, that would explain a lot.
Yeah, no, they apparently create new timelines whenever they go places.
Yeah, so
because they don't affect themselves by changing the past. Not like Back to the Future, as they told us multiple times. Anyway, so back to their actual debate.
Plus, the whole thing about Cap going back to be with Peggy for years and years is kind of creepy.
I mean, by itself, it's not creepy that they love each other or whatever.
I mean, it's not creepy, but okay. We can agree that him making out with Sharon Carter, Peggy's niece, is a little creepy, right?
That is a weird situation due to him being frozen for 80 years. Normally, this would not come up at all.
Yeah, but okay, you're dating the niece of the girl you were in a...
Yeah, but normally this would be impossible. So I don't know how to do the calculus on that. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know. It just...
I mean, I could see it felt weird from the fans' perspective, but an actual...
Dude, that's your girl's niece. I think you're projecting a little.
You might, yeah.
There was originally a deleted scene in Endgame where it was revealed that he was living with Sharon, but they weren't really happy together.
Oh. Huh. Interesting. But I could see why they deleted that scene, though. It was not important to the plot.
Well, that and, kind of emphasized how weird and unhealthy that relationship was, and we're all glad it stopped.
Well, they didn't want you to bring up that relationship at all if it made people feel weird, so... to our points, though. As I said at the beginning, it is actually important for people to have democracy, and that democracy have power to regulate and monitor those folks who enforce the laws and who have extraordinary abilities to potentially cause devastation if they ever turned corrupt or stupid. So I get that. My choice for Captain America's team is because I didn't feel this UN panel was sufficiently democratic to really qualify for all that. And to the more general idea of it being important sometimes to plant yourself like a tree, as Cap was once known for saying, though in this version they made someone else say it, and oppose the majority. Normally not with superpowers and people getting killed. I'm thinking more like Martin Luther King, who violated laws that were terrible, shitty laws that totally deserved it. And there has to be some exception for that, where your sense of conscience, your understanding of the situation is so clear that it makes sense to do civil disobedience. I will grant you it's a different category once you get into violence. Even violence for the greater good. That is much creepier and much easier to use for evil purposes. But yeah, I grasp the notion of having conscience enough to make up your own mind and sometimes even oppose the laws.
Meanwhile, I'm on Captain... No. I'm on Tony Stark's side.
Captain Tony.
I'm on Team Iron Man's side on the basis that, yes, sometimes you do need to do that. But I think that kind of sometimes means you have to also consider the point of view of the other side. What are the odds that Captain America is the only one who understands what's right versus 117 representatives from 117 nations who have probably been debating about this very topic for years on end, that they are all completely wrong and it needs to be thrown out completely? I mean, you can vote it into law and just eventually modify it.
Yeah, they did mention that. And...
But ultimately, my view is that superheroes do need accountability. Because yes, world-ending events do happen in the Marvel Universe. The Battle of New York. The battle of that one random-ass town in New Mexico where Loki sent the Destroyer. The invasion of the Dark Elves in Thor the Dark World in London.
Forgettable Dark World, yeah.
Yeah. All of these are things that do need superhero intervention. The thing is that not all of the things that they respond to as Avengers are necessarily going to be world-ending events. And sometimes, the inter arma silent legis. In times of war, the law falls silent. And sometimes you need to do things that are a little regrettable in order to achieve victory when the alternative is so much worse.
Yeah. Make sure you're fighting on the right side.
Giving my closing argument here.
All right.
So I can understand from a logical perspective that, no, it wasn't great that people died in Sokovia or in the Battle of New York or in all those other places. But the thing is, not all those places have the same stakes as the Battle of Sokovia or New York. Sometimes people need to be reined in a little bit to prevent people from losing their lives. And that's why I support Team Iron Man. Yes, the system isn't perfect, but we can work in the system to change it.
It's a respectable view. I'll give you that. I mean, we have a lot of overlap.
Not only that, but the way the Accords are presented is way less... This is not a case of John Sheridan rebelled against the government and Lockley stayed with the government because you could reform it from inside, when the guy in charge was clearly insane and was going to nuke the Earth.
Right. I think we'd both be on the same side in that case.
Oh, absolutely, we'd be on the same side. But in this case, the government, it's most of the planet's governments that are in favor of this. And this has been going on for years. I'm in favor of changing this because it doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, I guess I'm extrapolating from, Hydra having infected all the previous governments and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, your strongest argument there is that it's 117 nations. I feel like I want to count up their respective populations and see if their representatives are democratically elected, and then does it form a majority of the whole world?
Sealand and the Vatican were the most influential people here. Actually, the Vatican would be pretty influential. Molossia!
Molossia! I did not know that existed.
Okay. You ever see the film Kick-Assia?
No.
Okay. The nostalgia critics, for the first anniversary of the Channel Awesome getting together, the nostalgia critic got together all the different critics of the site and basically worked with...
They made a movie?
Yeah. Where they invaded Molossia and took it over. Molossia is a real country. It exists somewhere in America, but it's basically an independent nation for some reason.
One of those microstates.
But it's like one house. So
Okay.
So basically it was just for a bunch of shits and giggles.
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, Molossia
and Sealand.
Good for them.
And Antarctica.
Which is not even a country.
The Penguins.
The Penguins formed a government. I should mention just before we end that it is actually nice in general that these themes have cropped up into superhero stories. It shows like we're trying to take a slightly more intelligent view of how superheroes should be and how we should think about collateral damage and stuff that normally gets like tossed out the window. And you could make a whole story about let's say a hero who thinks he's doing the right thing and really turns out to make enough mistakes that no, it proves the point he should be held in check and should have just been following the rules this whole time. Subvert the cowboy cop, essentially.
If I was feeling snarkier, I'd say at this point, we do have that film. It's called Captain America Civil War.
Yeah,
See Captain America.
You could do a lot worse than Captain did.
Oh, absolutely.
You could have a guy who like shoots a missile at a building thinking the bad guy's in there, and oh wait, that's where the bad guy stuffed all his hostages. He was in the room across the street. Oh shit, and then make it clear that the UN panel or whoever actually knew better at the time, and we're trying to like get him on the radio. He's like, no, I'm doing the right thing. You know what I'm saying? You can make a whole story about that.
Right. So what I do appreciate is that Captain America Civil War handled these issues so well, or really handled them vaguely enough, that we can still debate these years later, and these are both valid perspectives. Even if he's wrong.
Yeah, that's how perspectives work.
So, yeah. Maybe one day we'll see Far From Home together.
Oh, yeah. We should do that sometime.
Yeah, I also need to see Ant-Man and the... Okay, the only MCU films I haven't seen are The Hulk, the Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, and Far From Home.
I'd say Far From Home is by far the best of those. I'm sorry, wait, no, I was thinking of Homecoming. I've not seen Far From Home yet, but I'm guessing it's the best. I don't know. There's a reason you skip those. I'm all for female superheroes, that's great, but just objectively, Captain Marvel was like a shrug type of movie. Okay, that was kind of fun. Yeah.
The reason why I've been kind of ambivalent about seeing that movie is if she's been around since the 1990s and you know you have a Superman level hero, why have you never ever contacted her ever?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Look, I mean, I get it. She has responsibilities in all of space, but here's the thing: Earth's been invaded like 3 times at this point.
Yeah.
Also, if you're I mean, I get space is really big, but you know, maybe you could stop by and reveal that you exist. Idiot.
Yep. Oh well.
My sister absolutely loves Captain Marvel, though, so, you know, I won't get into
She's
that.
a fun concept. I just thought the movie itself was like, nah.
Also, her inclusion in Endgame really didn't add anything.
They had so many heroes and stuff in there, nobody had time.
And I get that a bunch of the appearances in Endgame were just cameos. Like, what Drax did in the battle was, you know, not really that important. That being said, though, I don't know. I felt like you could have removed all of Captain Marvel's scenes.
Yeah, she had like 2 scenes.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Marvel, didn't have time for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you should try the MCU. By which I mean DC. What? I got that backwards.
Okay, and this is why you're wrong. This is just why you are objectively wrong about everything.
There was a Marvel and DC, wasn't there at one point? It was like all confused. No, I'm thinking of Shazam Marvel. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you're thinking of Captain Marvel, Shazam.
All right.
Oh god,
it's too many Marvels.
Yeah, that's why he's referred to as Shazam now.
Yep.
By the way, I really like how in the comics the first Captain Marvel died.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
I heard about that. I haven't read that one, but I heard about it.
Oh no! I mean, like, okay,
the Death of Marvel was like a big important comic.
What it was?
I heard this was the whole thing.
Yeah, but he died because of cancer.
Right, and that was the whole thing. They made a comic of him dying from cancer. And it was really tragic.
It's just a nice subversion of expectations, you know?
Yeah, man. He's one of the only characters I know who stayed dead.
Pretty much.
Unless you came back last week and no one told me.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure he stayed dead.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know that for sure, but whatever.
Okay, so this has been the Civil War debate.
Yep. Okay.
Featuring cancer.
Yeah, so anyways, I guess that's everything. So I'm Sith King.
I'm Sonic Sons.
Signing off.